welcome back to another video, this time featuring better lighting. I literally have a lamp behind my computer that's just pointed straight at me. Hopefully, if I stick with this, I will invest in some actual better equipment. Anyway, so today's video is going to be underrated queer books, according to me, myself, and I. I just really want to recommend these books and highlight them because I haven't seen them talked about very many other places, like on BookTube or popular on Goodreads, so I just want to go ahead and highlight them for you. This is going to be in no particular order. It's literally just going to be me like going through my Goodreads and recommending books, but hopefully you will like one or two of them and want to check them out. Alright, so oh no, my computer's about to die. Crisis averted. Okay, let's get back. Okay, so the first book that I want to recommend is called Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey. If you watch my previous video, you will know that I really did not like Outlawed by Anna North. Upright Women Wanted is like what Outlawed could have been, in my opinion. So Upright Women Wanted is set in a dystopian western very similar to Outlawed. It's basically about this group of librarians that is in charge of like disseminating materials that are pre-approved by the government. But being librarians, they're super badass and they're actually like undercover spies for the resistance. So the main character has recently escaped from this town because her friend who there was some like intimate connection with was hanged. I don't know. It's a very repressive society where being gay is criminalized and she got the death penalty for it. So the main character runs away and ends up joining the librarians because she thinks that that will allow her to sort of correct her impure thoughts. Luckily the librarians are like super queer, super supportive, and so they're like, okay, we're gonna like take you under our wing. And the main character eventually learns that it's okay for her to express her feelings, and she's just been through a lot of trauma, so she basically just experiences this great found family. Oh, I'm a sucker for found family stories. And it's awesome. The Western setting is very well fleshed out. The pacing is really great. It's not that long, so I ended up listening to it as an audiobook actually. Very, very well done. Highly recommend. Alright, so the next book is Summer of Salt by Katrina Lino. Summer of Salt is also a sapphic romance, and it is about these two sisters, one of whom is out as being gay, and they both live on this island. I think it's supposed to be in like New England, like off the coast of Massachusetts or something. But it's a magical island, so she and her sister and her mom come from a family of, not witches, but they all have magical powers. Except for the main character, she thinks that she doesn't have any magical powers. It's basically their last summer before they leave the island to go to college, which is going to be their first experience off the island. And I can't really reveal the main plot without spoiling anything, but basically she gets to find out a lot about herself. She has a love interest who is great. They're super cute together. It was refreshing to not have to deal as much with sort of the coming out narrative that's present in a lot of queer lit and just focus more on like the fun romance. So definitely would recommend Summer of Salt. Also, content warning, there is mention of a sexual assault in the book. So if that is triggering to you, I would not recommend reading it. The next book is On a Sunbeam by Tilla Walden, and that one is going to be a graphic novel. First of all, the images are beautiful. It takes place in outer space, so like the color palette and the design really emphasizes when you move settings, which was really cool because in a graphic novel, obviously the emphasis is more on like the images than it is on the text itself. So that was really a really cool way to like keep up with the plot and the changing scenes. Also, it's a really cute sapphic romance. It's great. This one is definitely more traumatic, I would say. Like, the couple sort of gets together, but then they're torn apart by, like, political and social issues. So it's definitely, like, more of an intense read. On a Sunbeam definitely has some, like, pretty intense stuff going on in it. All right. The next book is Honeypot, Black Southern Women Who Love Women by E. Patrick Johnson. So this is actually really Cool. I sort of just stumbled upon this because I was looking at book recommendations in the public library's like search page for LGBTQ lit. It's sort of an academic book, but it's written as an oral history. So it's written as from the perspective of the gay man who's writing it, sort of talking to this imagined representative of like the lesbian community, like women loving women. It's super engrossing. Each individual story is sort of told from a more academic perspective, like you've got like more of a typical interview, but it's imagined as if he is being transported into this other world where Black lesbian women live, and he gets transported from place to place in the South via sort of like the magical realism of the universe. You get so many different perspectives of different Black queer women in the South, which definitely I haven't seen talked about, like the queer Southern experience, particularly the Black queer Southern experience. Again, trigger warning, there is explicit mention of sexual assault towards the end of the book. I believe that the author does indicate this and allows you to skip over it if you would like, but just an additional content warning for this book. All right. The next book is Long Live the Tribe of Fatherless Girls by T. Kira Madden. So in this one, we get some great bi representation. Wahoo! Here I am with my mug of tea. Just enjoying it. I really loved this book because it's a coming of age story and it's a memoir. And so you get her early teen years, but she's exclusively attracted to men at the beginning, which like I related to that a lot as someone who sort of fell into that like compulsory heterosexuality as a young girl. But then you get sort of hints, which I also really like. So for instance, her friend's older sister comes over and her friend is like, oh yeah, she's like a lesbian. And then the main character is sort of like, oh, like she's really cute, but like she doesn't really like consider it to be an indication that she herself might be queer. But then of course later on, like she comes to terms with that. Also, this book is really cool because it's not just about like a coming of age queer identity story, it's also about her identity being mixed race. So I believe her father is white and Jewish, and then her mother is Hawaiian and Asian, I believe. So she talks a lot about race and about her experience growing up, which race obviously is more at the forefront than sexuality, which comes later. So that was really interesting to read. And then there's interesting class dynamics because her father was very prominent in the 2008 financial crisis. So that definitely plays a role in her childhood. There are also, content warning, are discussions of drug abuse. So be aware of that. I thought that she handled it very well. I would still recommend reading it, but just be aware. The next book is going to be Southernmost by Silas House. This one was heartbreaking to read. It is a fictional story, but the author himself is gay. It's about this couple. The husband, the main character, is a preacher, and they have a child. There's a horrible hurricane, or a horrible storm, I'm sorry, not a hurricane, that results in this gay couple trying to seek refuge in the home. But the wife refuses to let them in, even though like it's a life-threatening situation. She just refuses. And the husband sort of like, because you later find out that his brother is gay. So he's sort of like, wow, what if that had been my brother? Like, would she have also refused to like let him in? So he makes the very controversial decision to preach a sermon that is not well received at all. The sermon basically is saying that we should accept gay people into our church, into our community. That doesn't mean that we like are approving of their like lifestyle, but we should still welcome them because we're Christians. That did not go over well at all. In fact, it prompted the wife to ask for a divorce, and she wanted sole custody of the child. And because they're in a very small town in, I think, North Carolina, somewhere in like the Appalachians, the judge is definitely more on her side, and he's just terrified that he's never going to be able to see his child again. So he kidnaps the child and goes to the southernmost point in the US, which is in Florida, and he just tries to get a job, gets paid under the table, and tries to live as long as he can with his child. And it's just very anxiety-inducing, very scary, because he's super paranoid at the beginning. Obviously, he's scared that people have followed him, And it's just a very tenuous situation because you know that like this can't last forever. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but he gets a lot of different diverse perspectives on gay issues, not just from his brother. So that was really cool. And then the ending was pretty heartbreaking too, but I appreciated it regardless. So I would definitely recommend this book even though the main character isn't queer, because queer issues are like, that's the whole point of the book. So yeah, I don't believe, other than obviously like abduction and the divorce proceedings, I don't think that there are any other major content warnings in this book. All right, the next one is When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore. It's just gorgeous because some of the powers that the characters have, like one of them has the power to like grow flowers out of her skin, which is just like crazy. Like just the way that everything is described is so gorgeous. There's lots of talk of different cultures because the magical realism I think itself is rooted in like Latin American tradition, so there's lots of mention of like Latin American culture. I think this is Own Voices, but I'm not sure. There are trans main characters, which technically is a spoiler, but again, like I said in the last video, I don't think that representation is a spoiler. There's some pushback because of that. There is some physical abuse, so content warning for that, but overall it does have a relatively happy, satisfying ending, so I would still recommend it. All right, and then the last book that I don't have a physical copy of is My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, which is by Kabi Nagata, but it's translated by Jocelyn Allen, or at least the edition I read was. So the main character is in a very, like a severely depressive episode. She doesn't go to work, she lives with her parents. She talks about like all the ways that depression has affected her very severely. But she also is gay, and she doesn't, like, she wants to explore that more, but she doesn't really know how. So she ends up hiring a prostitute to sort of like help her like have companionship, but also like explore her sexuality more. And it's just, it's very funny in like a dark way. Like if you're someone who has experienced depression, you will definitely like relate to the place that she finds herself in the book. So it's definitely very tragic, but the relationship between her and the prostitute is actually surprisingly very wholesome. I would just highly recommend it. Again, content warning, she is very depressed, so be aware if you are very severely depressed at the moment, this might not be the best read for you. All right, so now I'm gonna go with the physical books that I have. The first one is gonna be Less by Andrew Sean Greer. So this one was like a national bestseller, but I also feel like I haven't seen it talked about that much. This is hilarious. It is about a gay man in his 40s who has recently gotten out of a very long relationship, and he just doesn't know what to do with himself. So he gets invited to do a couple of different things around the world. So he just like agrees to do all of them, so that he just goes from place to place trying to like forget about his like long-term boyfriend. And actually I think they were married. Yeah, his ex-husband. So he's just like going to these different places, and it's just so funny. Like it's basically written like a rom-com, and it's just really wholesome. It has a great ending. I highly recommend it. The next book is going to be Marriage of a Thousand Lies by S.J. Sindhu. This one is also pretty heartbreaking, but it's a great exploration of the intersection of race and sexuality. So the main character is a Sri Lankan American, and she has come out to her family, has faced severe consequences. She ended up being cut off, so she didn't have funding to go to school. She ended up being homeless for a period of time. But she ends up marrying this gay man because they're both Sri Lankan, and they decide that it's better to be in a fake marriage, hence the title Marriage of a Thousand Lies, than to be unable to like exist in their communities. But the main character did have a relationship with one of her friends growing up, who is now getting married to a presumably straight man. So the main crux of the book is that the woman that she had a relationship with, who's getting married, just sort of keeps stringing her along and wishing that she could just run away with her, and eventually she gets other really great queer friends who are like, you're better than this, like you don't need to like focus on her. So that's basically the premise of Marriage of a Thousand Lies. I would highly recommend it if you're looking for more diverse queer lit, and S.J. Sindhu herself is gay, so I think this is Own Voices. Now we have Out of the Woods by Luke Turner. I got this book from Gay is the Word bookshop in London, pre-pandemic obviously. This is a memoir about a bisexual man, Luke Turner, and it is really great. It basically draws parallels between the forest near where he grew up and his own experience being a bi man. And it's just really, really interesting and cool. So I would highly recommend this. I hadn't read that many, I don't think I'd read a single book about a bi man before I read this. So I would highly recommend if you're looking for more like bi male representation in literature. And obviously it's a memoir, so it's based on his life. So this book is La Fille dans l'écran, and it is by Manon Devaux and Louis Luby. It is also super great. It's a sapphic romance, and it is a graphic novel, and it's basically about this French girl and this Quebecoise girl who start an internet like relationship because one is a cartoonist, I think, and the other one is a writer, and so they basically like really like they complement each other's work, or one of them might be a photographer, I can't remember. They're both creatives, and they develop this really cute friendship, eventually romance. It is great. I also really love the juxtaposition of, so you've got like the black and white versus the color, which I think is really cool. It is super wholesome. I really liked it. It's also in French, obviously, but I'm sure there is an English translation. I can look it up and let you know in the description. This is my favorite book of all time, which I never thought I would be able to say about a book, but it honestly checks all of my boxes. This book is called This Is How You Lose the Time War, and it is co-written by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. Oh my gosh, y'all. It is everything I want in a book. It is enemies to lovers romance. The two main characters are spies on opposite sides of this time war. It is a sapphic romance. It is sci-fi fantasy. It is basically written as a series of letters where the two go from being enemies to lovers, and it is an amazing romance, and I highly recommend. Literally, this book, I originally got it as a library book, and I loved it so much that I had to buy a physical copy so that I could reread it. Like, the lines in this book are just absolutely gorgeous. The writing is amazing. It's definitely very, like, flowery, but honestly, I love that. I don't even know what to say. It's such a good book. It is such a good book. Let me see if I can find like one of the really great lines. I really like this one. I'll read this one. This is on page 130 and it continues on to page 131. But when I think of you, I want to be alone together. I want to strive against and for. I want to live in contact. I want to be a context for you and you for me. I love you and I love you, and I want to find out what that means together. It's just so good. Like, literally when I was reading this book, I wanted to go slower because I didn't want it to be over. I was just like, I want to just keep reading this book forever. It's so wholesome and great. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you when I see you.